A boot crashed into the side of a woman's ribs. She doubled forward but could not fall. Her wrists were bound tight to a wooden post above her head. Rope cut into her skin every time she breathed. Another boot. Then another. 3 men stood around her, laughing low and mean. One spit tobacco juice into her hair. Another grabbed her chin and forced her face up to the sun. Her left eye was already swelling shut. Her lip was split open. She did not cry. She did not beg. She just looked at him steady and said nothing at all. Her name was Nashoda. She was Apache, and she had been tied to that fence for nearly a full day. What that biker did in the next 10 minutes would leave 3 armed, grown men on their knees in the dirt begging for mercy. Stay with me on this one. The dirt road ran straight through nothing for 40 miles. Red rock on both sides. No towns. No fuel stops. Just heat and silence and the kind of wind that can push a small car off the shoulder if it hits you wrong. The biker came out of that wind on a black Harley-Davidson shovelhead. Older bike. Patched in places. The kind of machine a man rides not because he can afford something newer but because he and the bike have been through too much together to part ways now. His name was Knox. 42 years old. Beard going gray at the chin. He wore an old leather vest over a faded shirt, and on the back of that vest, stitched in silver thread, was a small medallion. A unit patch from Vietnam. 1st Cavalry. He had earned it. He had also tried for a long time to forget it. Knox was not a man passing through. Knox was a man hunting. For the past 3 months, he had been quietly making his way across Arizona and into New Mexico, following a thin trail of rumors. Apache women going missing from the reservations near the border. 3 of them in 18 months. Local sheriffs not asking questions. Nobody in any official position writing down their names. Knox had names. He kept them in a small leather notebook in the inside pocket of his vest. And one of those names was Lupita Begay. Taken 8 months ago. Body never found. Her sister was Nashoda. Now here's the thing about Nashoda. She was 26 years old. She lived on the reservation 30 miles south of where the dirt road we are talking about cuts through the desert. She had a job at the trading post. She had a small house. She had a quiet life. And after Lupita vanished, she had something else too. Questions she was not supposed to be asking. The reservation police told her to grieve and move on. The county sheriff laughed in her face. The state troopers told her there was no evidence of a crime. So Nashoda started doing the only thing left. She started looking herself. That is what brought her to the gate of the Holloway Ranch. Vance Holloway owned 12,000 acres of cattle country in this part of New Mexico. His family had owned that land for 3 generations. He had money. He had lawyers. He had a sheriff who took envelopes from him every month like it was a paycheck. Nobody in 3 counties crossed Vance Holloway. Not the Apache. Not the Mexican families who worked his fences. Not even the priests in town. But Nashoda had heard a story. A trucker who used to deliver feed to the ranch had been drinking in a bar in Gallup, and the trucker had said something he should not have said. He said that some of the ranch hands talked about an Apache girl Vance had brought to the property the spring before. Talked about her like she was livestock. Talked about her like she had not made it back home. That was Lupita. Nashoda came to the ranch at dawn the day before. She was not foolish. She did not announce herself. She climbed a rocky ridge on the north side and watched the buildings through binoculars for 6 hours. She wanted to see the layout. She wanted to know if anyone there matched the trucker's description. Then a ranch hand spotted her. By the time she heard the dogs, it was already too late. They beat her. They dragged her down into the yard. Vance came out of the main house and looked at her the way a man looks at a stray animal. He told his men to tie her to the south fence and leave her there for the day. He said he would decide what to do with her when he got back from town that evening. He said it like he was deciding what to have for dinner. That was 20 hours ago. For 20 hours, Nashoda had stood at that fence in the heat and the cold and the dark. She had been kicked. She had been spit on. She had been told what they were going to do to her when Vance gave the word. She had not eaten. She had not slept. She had not cried. And somewhere on a dirt road 30 miles north, a man on an old Harley had stopped at a gas pump and asked the attendant a single question. "You know a place out this way called the Holloway Ranch?" The attendant looked at him a long moment, then nodded. Knox paid for his gas. He got back on the bike. The three men at the fence heard the engine before they saw it. Came up the long driveway slow and steady. They turned, hands on their belts, and watched as the black Harley rolled past the cattle gate and stopped about 30 feet from where Nashota was tied to the post. The biggest of the three was a thick-shouldered man with a crew cut. His name was Cole. He was the kind of man who had been hitting smaller people his whole life and had never once been hit back hard enough to learn anything from it. "This is private property," Cole said. "Turn that thing around." Knox did not turn the bike around. He killed the engine. He swung one leg over the seat and stood up. He was not a huge man, average height, solid build, but there was something about how he stood that made Cole's two friends shift their weight without thinking about it. "You hear me, biker?" Cole said. "I said get gone." Knox did not answer. He looked past Cole, past the second man, past the third. He looked at the woman tied to the fence. Nashota lifted her head. Her left eye was almost swollen shut. There was dried blood under her nose. Her shirt was torn at the shoulder. Her wrists were dark purple where the rope had been cutting her skin for 20 hours. She looked up at the man standing by the bike. She did not know him. She did not know what he wanted. She had spent the last 20 hours preparing herself for whatever came next, and she had decided one thing in those 20 hours. She would not beg. She would not cry. She would not give any of them, not Vance, not Cole, not this stranger, the satisfaction of seeing her break. She looked Knox dead in the face. She straightened her shoulders against the post as much as the rope would let her. And in a voice that was hoarse from thirst but steady, she said 5 words. "Do whatever you want, biker." Now you have to understand what that meant. She was not surrendering. She was not asking for mercy. She was telling him, telling all of them, that she had stepped past the place where their cruelty could reach her. They could do whatever they were going to do. She was not going to scream and she was not going to bargain. She had made her peace. It was the bravest thing any of those men had ever heard a person say. Cole laughed. "You hear that? She likes you, brother. Hop in line." Knox did not laugh. He started walking, not toward Cole, toward Nashota. Cole stepped sideways to block him. "Hey, hey," I said. Knox stopped, looked at him, did not say a word. Something passed between them in that second. Cole had been in fights. Cole had hurt people. But Cole had never looked into the eyes of a man who had already decided what was going to happen and was simply waiting for the other person to catch up. Cole took half a step back without realizing he had moved. Knox walked past him. He stopped about 3 feet from Nashota. He looked at her wrists. He looked at her face. He did not touch her. What he did next was the part she would remember every day for the rest of her life. He reached behind him, slow, and he pulled a canteen off his belt. Army issue. Dented. Old. He unscrewed the cap. He took one small sip himself, to show her it was clean. Then he held the canteen up to her cracked lips, careful, the way a man holds a cup to a child. "Drink," he said, quiet, slow. "You're dehydrated." Nashota stared at him. This was not what she had braced for. She had braced for hands. She had braced for a knife. She had braced for being thrown into the back of his bike like something to be carried off and used. She had not braced for water. She drank. Just a little. He pulled the canteen away. "More in a minute," he said. "Too fast and you'll be sick." Then he reached into his vest and pulled out a folding knife. He flicked it open. Cole and the other two froze. Knox did not look at them. He reached up, took hold of the rope above Nashota's left wrist, and cut it clean through. Then the right. Her arms dropped down to her sides. She nearly fell. Knox caught her by the elbow, held her up, set her gently against the fence so her legs could find themselves again. And here is where everything went still for one strange second. Cole was so confused by what he had just watched that his brain had to catch up to his body. The other two men looked at each other. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The horses in the corral on the other side of the yard nickered softly. Cole let out a long breath. Then he smiled. Not a friendly smile. "All right then," Cole said. "All right. Big mistake, brother." But Cole did not move yet. And that hesitation was all Knox needed. Knox walked Nashota by the elbow. Slow. Steady. Past the post. Past Cole. Past the other two men who looked to Cole for a sign and did not get one. Knox set Nashota on the back of the bike, pulled a folded blanket from a saddlebag and wrapped it around her shoulders. Started the engine. Cole was still standing there. Knox turned the bike. Began to roll down the long driveway toward the gate. Nashota looked back over her shoulder. The three men at the fence had not moved. They were just standing there, watching them go. For the first time in 20 hours, Nashota allowed herself one small breath that was not afraid. The bike turned through the gate. The dirt road stretched out empty in front of them. The ranch fell behind. The danger fell behind. It was over, or so it seemed. The rifle shot cracked across the desert and the back tire of the Harley exploded. The bike skidded sideways. Knox fought it. Nashota gripped his vest hard. The Harley went down on its left side and slid 10 feet through the dirt before stopping. Knox rolled, came up on one knee, pulled Nashota clear of the fallen bike. Both of them on the ground. The bike's engine still rumbling on its side. Knox looked back up the road. Half a mile back, a long black Cadillac and two pickup trucks were rolling slow toward them. In the bed of the lead pickup, a man with a deer rifle was working the bolt for a second shot. In the Cadillac, sitting in the passenger seat with the window down, was a man Nashota recognized. Vance Holloway. He had been driving back to the ranch. He had passed his own cattle gate and seen his men standing in the dirt and a black Harley going the wrong direction down his road with an Apache woman on the back. And Vance Holloway, who had spent 20 years making sure nothing left his property without his permission, had told the man in the truck to shoot. The vehicles stopped 50 yards out. Doors opened. 5 men got out. 3 from the trucks. 2 from the Cadillac. Plus Vance. Plus Cole and the other 2 coming up the road behind on foot. 9 men. One of them was wearing a sheriff's badge. Knox stood up slowly. He kept Nashota behind him. He raised both hands shoulder high, palms open. He did not reach for anything. Vance walked forward. The sheriff walked beside him. The men spread out in a loose half-circle. "Well," Vance said. He was a tall man, 60 years old, white shirt, silver belt buckle, the kind of voice you hear on car commercials. "Well, well, well, what have we got here?" He stopped 15 feet from Knox. "You took something off my property, son," Vance said. "That's a real interesting choice you made." The sheriff was a heavy man named Drum. He had a thick gray mustache and small eyes. He spoke without any particular interest, the way a man at a hardware store reads a list. "Drop the knife, biker. Hands behind your head. Get on your knees." Knox did not move. "I'd listen to him," Vance said. "Sheriff Drum here is a careful man. He has already decided how this report is going to read tomorrow morning. Drunk biker tried to abduct an Apache trespasser. Bike crashed during the chase. Both parties expired before backup arrived." Vance smiled. "Nobody is going to ask twice," he said. "Nobody asked the last time." Nashota felt something cold go through her chest at those last 4 words. Nobody asked the last time. She had known it deep in her gut for 8 months. Now she heard a man say it out loud. Knox spoke for the first time since the bike went down. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Lupita Begay," he said. Vance's smile froze on his face. "What did you say?" "Lupita Begay," Knox said again. 23 years old. Apache, disappeared from her job at the trading post in Sale on the night of March 14th of last year. Last seen accepting a ride from a man in a white Cadillac with a silver belt buckle. Knox tilted his head a fraction. "I'm guessing you traded the white one in." Vance said nothing. "Now if you are still with me on this, and I really hope you are, you should understand something. This is the moment the whole story turns over. Knox did not stumble onto this ranch. Knox came here looking for this exact man. And what he is about to say next is going to land like a freight train. If you appreciate the kind of story where a quiet man finally speaks the truth out loud, hit that subscribe button before we go any further. Because this next part, this is what you came for." Knox went on, and his voice never rose. "There were 3 before her," he said. "Marisol Yazzie, Delitzosi, and a 14-year-old named Imogene that nobody on the reservation will say her last name out loud anymore because of what was done to her." The sheriff's hand had moved to his sidearm. He had not yet drawn it. Knox looked at the sheriff. "You took an envelope from this man last Friday at the diner on Route 191, Knox said. $3,000 in 20s. You signed the back of an unrelated speeding ticket with a 4-digit code that is the wire transfer reference for the deposit your wife made into a credit union in Phoenix the next morning." The sheriff's face had gone the color of paper. Vance stared at Knox. "Who are you?" Vance said. It was not a question. It was a demand. Knox did not answer that question yet. He just reached very slowly into the inside pocket of his vest. The men's guns came up. Knox kept his other hand high. With 2 fingers, he pulled out a folded photograph. He held it up so Nashota could see it, not Vance. It was a picture of a young Apache woman smiling at the camera, holding a small white dog. Nashota made a sound. A small, broken sound. The first sound she had made in 20 hours that was not steady. It was Lupita. Knox folded the photograph and put it back in his vest. "Here is what is going to happen," he said. He spoke to Vance, but he was looking at the sheriff. "I am going to count to 3. On 3, you are going to find out something about the world you did not know yesterday. You can decide what role you want to play in that. But the choice is going to be made very fast." Vance laughed. A short, ugly sound. "Boy, there are 9 of us," he said. "And 1 of you, with a busted bike. You don't count to 3 at me on my road." Knox said, 1. He turned half a step. His left hand was still raised. His right hand had drifted closer to his belt. The man with the deer rifle in the truck bed was lining up his shot. 2. Sheriff Drum, pale and sweating, looked at Vance, then looked at Knox, then made the decision that was going to keep him out of a federal prison for the next 30 years. He drew his sidearm. He pointed it at Vance Holloway. "Don't anybody move," Drum said. His voice was hoarse. "Nobody. Move." Vance turned his head slowly. "Drum," he said, "what in God's name are you doing?" "I'm doing what I should have done 4 years ago," the sheriff said. "Now everybody put your weapons on the ground, or I swear to Christ I will start with you." The man in the truck bed hesitated. He had been raised on this ranch. He looked at Cole. Cole looked at Vance. Vance was staring at Drum like a man trying to read a foreign language. Knox took advantage of that 1 second. He moved. What happened in the next 11 seconds is the part most of the men on that road would later have trouble describing. Knox closed the distance to the man in the truck bed. 3 running steps, a jump up onto the bumper, and his right hand came around in a short arc that drove the heel of his palm into the rifleman's jaw. The rifleman went sideways. Knox caught the rifle, swung it down, racked the bolt. 2 seconds. He turned the rifle on Cole. Cole, who had been raising a revolver, froze. "Drop it," Knox said. Cole dropped it. The 2 men from the Cadillac were drawing pistols. Sheriff Drum was already turning toward them, but he was a slow man and he was old. He would not have made it. Nashota made it. She had been a woman tied to a fence 20 seconds ago. Now she was running. She picked up a fist-sized rock off the side of the road as she went and threw it overhand at the closer of the two men. The rock hit him in the side of the head with a sound like a hammer on a fence post. He dropped. His pistol went off into the dirt. The second man swung his gun toward her. Knox shot him in the shoulder before he could pull the trigger. The man spun and fell. 6 seconds. The two ranch hands behind Cole turned to run. Drum fired one shot into the dirt at their feet. "On the ground," he said. "All of you. Hands on your heads." They went down. 11 seconds. Vance Holloway was the last one standing. He was looking at the bodies of his men. He was looking at the sheriff who had just betrayed him. He was looking at the biker with the rifle. He was looking at the Apache woman who, somehow, had a rock in her hand again. He started to laugh. "You think this matters?" Vance said. He was talking to all of them. He was also talking to nobody. "You think this changes anything? I have lawyers. I have judges. I have the governor's chief of staff on my Christmas card list. You think you are going to put me in prison?" Knox walked toward him. The rifle was at low ready. Knox did not raise it. He stopped 6 feet away. "No," Knox said. "I don't think you are going to prison." Something in his voice made Vance go still. 3 years ago," Knox said, "the FBI opened a file on a series of disappearances across 4 reservations in the Southwest. They could not get traction. The local authorities would not cooperate. The witnesses would not speak. The bodies, when they were found, were never on tribal land." Vance's face was changing. Slowly. "I have been working with that office for 2.5 years, Knox said. "I am not law enforcement. I am what they call a consultant. I find people who will not be found. I find evidence that will not be turned over. I deliver it. They take it from there." Knox glanced over his shoulder. Far down the road, beyond the broken bike, beyond the Cadillac, 3 black SUVs were rolling in fast from the highway. They had been waiting for a signal. Sheriff Drum had given the signal when he drew his gun. "The barn behind your main house," Knox said, turning back to Vance. "There is a locked room under the floor. There are photographs in there. There are personal items. There is what a prosecutor would call a trophy collection. I have been inside that barn twice in the last 10 days. I made photocopies." Vance's face had gone the color of cement. "You are not going to prison," Knox said again. "You are going to a federal facility. And you are going to die there of old age. And not one person on this earth will say your name out loud." The SUVs pulled in. Doors opened. Men in dark jackets with yellow letters on the back stepped out. Vance Holloway looked at Nashota one more time. Whatever he was going to say, he did not say it. He sat down in the dirt of his own road and put his hands on his head. And he did not move again until the federal agents lifted him to his feet. They worked the Holloway Ranch for 6 days. The federal agents brought in evidence teams. Cadaver dogs from Albuquerque. Forensic specialists from Quantico. They tore up the floor of the barn. They dug behind the equipment shed. They drained a stock pond at the south end of the property. They found 4 bodies. The third one they brought up was Lupita Begay. Nashota was at the trading post in Sale when the call came. The federal agent on the other end of the line did not say anything that mattered out loud. He just said it was time for her to come home. She knew what that meant. She drove out the next morning. The agents had laid Lupita in a clean wooden box, the way Nashota had asked. They had wrapped her in a white sheet. The agent in charge, a woman named Reyes, walked Nashota through what they had found and what they could give back to her family. Reyes was patient. She was kind. She did not say things she did not mean. Lupita was buried 5 days later in the small cemetery on the reservation where the Begay family had been laying their dead for 140 years. Nashota's mother sang the songs. Her uncle spoke. Her cousins carried the box. The wind was steady that day, the way it always is on that hillside, and the wind carried the songs out across the desert and away. Knox was not at the funeral. He had stayed in the area for the first 3 days, working with the agents, giving statements, helping them locate every piece of evidence he had compiled in his 3 months of quiet investigation. Then, when the work he could do was done, he had told the agent in charge that he was leaving. He did not say goodbye to Nashoda. He did not think it was his place. But on the morning of the 7th day, before the sun came up, Nashoda drove out to the small motel on the highway where she knew he was staying. She had asked Reyes for the address. Reyes had given it without comment. Knox was loading the bike when she pulled up. The back tire had been replaced. The dent in the left tank was still there. He was wearing the same vest. The medallion on the back caught the first light of the morning. Nashoda got out of her truck. She walked over. She stopped about 3 feet from him, the same distance he had stopped from her at the fence. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I owe you my life," she said finally. Knox shook his head once. "No, I owe you my sister's name back," she said. "I owe you the truth of what happened to her. I owe you the burial we just gave her. Don't tell me I owe you nothing." Knox set down the saddlebag he had been holding. He turned to face her properly. "You owe me nothing," he said. "I came here for the same reason your sister stopped coming home. I came because somebody had to. The fact that it was me does not make a debt. It just means I was the one who got there." Nashoda was quiet. "There were others before her," she said. "You said their names." "There were. Will you keep doing this?" Knox looked out across the desert. The sun was just touching the tops of the mesas to the east. The light was gold on the rocks. The road was empty. "Until I can't," he said. Nashoda nodded slowly. She had come out here to say something. She had rehearsed it in her truck on the drive over. Now, standing in front of him, she felt the rehearsed words go away. What came out instead was simpler. "At the fence," she said. "When you walked up, I told you to do whatever you wanted. I remember. I want you to know what I meant." Knox waited. "I had decided I was going to die there," Nashoda said. "I had decided that the only thing I had left was to go without giving them anything. Not a tear. Not a word. Not a sound. When I looked up at you, I thought you were just another one of them. And I told you to do whatever you wanted because I had already taken myself away from the place where it could hurt me." She stopped. She took a breath. She looked him in the face. "You did not do what I expected. You gave me water. You cut the rope. You stood between me and them. And I have spent 6 days trying to figure out how to thank a stranger for showing up at the worst hour of my life and being exactly the right kind of man." Knox said nothing. "So this is what I came to say." Nashoda reached into the pocket of her jacket and pulled out something small. A leather cord. On the end of it, a smooth, flat piece of turquoise, polished by hands long dead, set in a tiny silver ring. "This was my grandmother's. She gave it to my mother. My mother gave it to Lupita. Lupita was wearing it the night she got into that car. She held it out." Knox looked at it. "I can't take that," he said quietly. "You can," Nashoda said. "Because every time you walk up on another fence somewhere, every time another woman looks up at you and thinks the worst is about to happen, I want her grandmother and my grandmother and my mother and my sister to be standing there with you. I want there to be more than just one man on that road." Knox was very still for a long time. Then he took the cord. He looped it around his neck. He tucked the turquoise inside his shirt, against his chest, where the medallion on his back already lived. He looked at Nashoda. He nodded once. He did not trust himself to speak. Nashoda stepped back. "Ride safe, biker," she said. Knox swung his leg over the seat. He kicked the engine to life. He raised one hand. He turned the bike toward the highway. The black Harley rolled out onto the road, gathered itself, and disappeared into the morning sun. Nashoda stood in the empty parking lot of the small motel and watched until the dust settled. Then she went home.